What's up, people? Back with another reaction, back with some more Iron Maiden. Hadn't done an Iron Maiden reaction in a while, hadn't realized it had been as long as it's been, so I felt like I needed to get back to doing that. So we're going to listen to the final tune on their Seventh Son of a Seventh Son album. This is a song written by Steve Harris. It's called Only the Good Die Young. I absolutely love this song, both sonically and lyrically. Did want to give a shout out to the artwork, absolutely love it, and there's the disc. So yeah, I mentioned it before, this is a concept album where the songs, you can listen to them independently and they sort of have intriguing lyrics on their own or in a general sense, but it also relates to this larger story, a narrative that is told over the course of the album. I absolutely love that when albums are more than just a sort of random assortment or collection of songs. I really do appreciate the sort of extra effort that goes into making it a sort of comprehensive and narrative work of art. I absolutely love that. So this tune, as I said, it's another one that I think you can take in a general way. The phrase "only the good die young," it speaks to the way in which it seems far, far too often people with awful intentions, people who exploit, people who are cruel and barbarous, for some reason seem to live longer, seem to have more influence. They die comfortable in their beds, where people who just want simple lives are often the ones who are exploited or manipulated or sent to their early graves for one reason or another. And in this case, there's some lines about sort of like ecclesiastical authorities like bishops. They have these holy words, but ultimately they might not be as pious as they're suggesting, but they're the ones who live long. They're the ones who have influence for great amounts of time, even though they may not be as reverent and pious as their position would suggest. Whereas, again, sort of the normal person who just wants to kind of live their life with faith and have a pious disposition and live their life with responsibility and so on, they're the ones who are often set upon and burdened and ultimately go to a grave early. But I think the song also, of course, has a meaning within this larger album narrative, and in that case it's the final chapter. And I think it's fascinating because this seventh son of a seventh son seems to be aware of his ability to foresee the future, his ability to predict what's coming and potentially be of aid to the villagers, to the people who he's trying to convince. But the thing is, he doesn't actually have an ability to prove his visions, his forecasting, his prognostications. So ultimately, he has no way to prove what he's saying to these people. And it seems to me, by the end of the song, he's saying, yes, I could look into the future, and I could ultimately, influence things to a great degree because I have these supernatural powers. But he seems to reject the responsibility, and he's like, it doesn't seem to be worth it, and it would lead to me having to basically sacrifice myself to be, this sort of servant to other people. So it's interesting. I don't think he dies, but I think by the end of the song, the sort of good version of him, the version that, would help others and would use his powers to benefit others, I think that version is dead, and I think he goes to embrace a more sinful life, a more indulgent or selfish life. So at that point, the evil him may continue living on, and suddenly it's like Eddie sort of takes over, perhaps. So yeah, I don't know. Let me know. Some of you out there are huge Iron Maiden fans and have been listening to and thinking about these songs for much longer. So let me know if my interpretation's off there. Like I said, I do think it can operate on multiple levels, but it's definitely sort of the final chapter in this larger story. I'm trying to remember what year this album came out. Give me 1 second. 1988, right, okay, so Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, the album is 1988. And this is the last album from it. But yeah, lyrically, let me know if I'm missing something there. I am actually remembering right now, before we start, that there's a line, something about like, do the undead see through our eyes? And I think, like, again, in the context of the narrative, that could be, that is a very sort of fascinating moment. But I think in general, it's like, it's a sort of very interesting, like, human question. It's like, yeah, well, basically, I wonder what you all might say about it, but I really do find it to be a profound question that could work both within the narrative and more generally. Nevertheless, I'll stop my yammering. This is Iron Maiden, Only the Good Die Young, the final song on Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. I caught myself being like overly verbose right there. verbosity, cool. Too much verbosity, verboten. I do love that guitar riff, just that classic kind of warm, having guitar riff. Ain't that the truth? My favorite seal. If I cancel tomorrow, the undead will back me today. There's some keyboards in there? Is that... I know Somewhere in Time is more famous for using keyboards, but I felt like there was a keyboard in there. It's been too long since I heard a good Iron Maiden guitar solo. Like the sort of intensity of this section. Intensification is what I was going to say. Innocent pawn in a game that's just one more stalemate between good and evil. Do the undead live within us and see through our eyes? That's what it is. I love the chorus in this. It's relatively simple, but I feel it. Again, there's that keyboard, right? I remember thinking, like, even for Iron Maiden, this is just like, you guys are madmen, you're all crazy. My God. Masterpiece.
7 deadly sins, 7 ways to win, 7 holy paths to hell.
Very theatrical, yeah.
7 downward slopes, 7 bloodied hopes, 7 are your burning fires, 7 your desires.
Brilliant. Yeah, I really do love that, and I just love the idea of, you know, them deciding, you know what, let's make an album where we're going to tell this longer story, which has sort of individual chapters. Yeah, like I said, I think the lyrics operate on a couple different levels. And I don't know, I just, keep thinking about that line. I'm a historian, and when you study history, and certainly when you get a graduate degree in history, inevitably, no matter what sort of geographical region you end up focusing on, no matter which sort of, century, or, in fact, when you get a graduate degree, you have to, like, way more narrow than that. I mean, like a 5-year span or a 15-year span in a very specific place in a very specific context. But yeah, when you study history, it's just inevitably the annals of history are full of awful brutality and cruelty and so on, and people who really didn't deserve to live as long as they did, and exploit and make others suffer as much as they did. But sadly, that sort of dominates the historical record. So that line about, like, did the undead live through us and see through our eyes? It feels very profound to me, because it's like the victims of history, like, standing up and looking through our eyes, and maybe in some limited places and times trying to ameliorate that, and perhaps make it so that the good can maybe live a little bit longer, and maybe the evil won't have as much influence or be around for quite as long. That's basically what I was going to say at the beginning before I started the song. I just worried that I had carried on too long, which does happen sometimes, so I apologize for my loquacious ways. Nevertheless, let me know what you think. Let me know if you have a even more specific understanding of the lyrics. I know a lot of you out there are massive fans, and like I said, been listening for a lot longer than I have, so please do give a shout if you have something to say about the tune. Thank you for listening and watching. I will see you next time. Peace.